And good evening, everyone. I hope you are well. It has been an interesting day. I'm pushing the boat out today because I'm actually live on TikTok as well. And I can't multitask, but I thought I would actually try it. Unfortunately, it's not possible at the moment to live stream through the platform to push it out to TikTok as well at the same time, which is a shame. So to go live on TikTok as well, I have to go live separately on my phone. So good evening, everyone on TikTok, and good evening, everyone who's joining me. So today was going to be the night of 100 protests throughout the country. Mainstream media has been whipping up a frenzy today of total anarchy throughout the country. The Daily Mail, I don't know what they were on today, but they were certainly certainly getting very excited about what they anticipated happening. And in the end, there was police everywhere. There was other members of society, communities there. Let's leave it at that. And police were all tooled up with nobody to arrest. So the police, in many places, were panicking. What do we do? Because we have this other demographic being a little bit aggressive, and we don't have anyone from the far right to provoke so that we can blame them. And obviously, Sky News were very, very disappointed because they didn't have any members of the far right to pick on and blame. So who actually benefited from today? Well, social media, of course, because social media has been very busy today. As I've always said, lefties don't debate, lefties only hate. And they've been out in their toxic thousands today, all over social media, as always, but we don't bother with them. Now, who else has benefited? Well, apart from people who board up shops, who must have made a fortune today, and be rubbing their hands together in joy. That's about it. But this raises questions because here's what else happened today. Now, not only have we had all of these new draconian measures announced, which are threats, they're not law because no laws have actually been changed. It's only threats from Keir Starlin and his cohorts. However, here's what is interesting. Today, several times it was announced that anybody who even shares a video of any protests is going to be charged. Now, that's very convenient because the only people out running amok tonight were non-right wing, let's put it that way. Now, they have been out, these videos, people have been daring to challenge the law by posting these videos, which is how we all know what's been going on in different parts of the country. But it all seems not just suspicious, but it all seems very convenient how it sort of falls into place. But more than anything, I'm absolutely delighted that nobody took the bait. Absolutely delighted that effectively social media and the haters have egg on their face tonight because they had predicted Armageddon, and basically what they got was a reverse lockdown, to be perfectly honest, and that's how it seems to have been just about everywhere. So hooray for that, and bravo to everyone who read between the lines and stayed at home and didn't give them the opportunity to pick people who are angry and make them to be the bad guys. But here's the interesting thing, and here's what we've learned over the last few days or weeks with regards to the media, is that mainstream media can actually post anything and say something as fact, and you have to go through the law to challenge that, and that's civil, not criminal. And I'll get back to that in a moment. But what we have been told over the last few weeks is that if you suspect something or if you have an opinion of something, whatever it may be, it was Mr. Brown with the steel bar in the dining room, I believe. Or the other common one is that they don't like is unconfirmed. You're a bad guy and we're going to report you, and so on and so forth, which is, I think it's time to drop the nice words. So excuse my French. It's absolute bullshit, to be honest. But it gives the haters something to just keep resharing. But where mainstream media is concerned, if they literally say something about you that is clearly incorrect, how do you go about it? What do you do? Well, there are advantages and disadvantages to the exposure that people get who have been misrepresented by mainstream media, because obviously the haters then pick up on that and then they'll share it everywhere, which it can be quite distressing at the time when you know that something is not true and it is then being shared again and again. On the other hand, there are, for the time being, there are measures that you can take in this situation, something that I myself am doing. Let me just check the. This is on TikTok. I think it proves now the media is full of shit. Absolutely. Now, and here we go. There's Alex here. Why don't we ever hear the words far left? They are quick to label people far right, though. Absolutely, but I'm sure we know why. Now, I've had something similar. This was a week before the election it started, 6 days before the election. How convenient. I won't mention the media sources in question because it is going through legal process at the moment. But basically, suddenly, something appeared that I was supposed to have said a long, long time ago, like years ago. I thought, this is news to me. I don't remember saying anything like that, because I know that if I say anything, that I express it as my opinion. If it's anything to do with something may have happened, then if it's fact, I'll say it's fact. If it's not fact, I'll make it clear that it's not fact, my opinion, or I have been told, or I am aware, or I understand, or it's unconfirmed, or whatever it may be. Anyway, so this is what happened. It appeared, and then it appeared in 2 or 3 other places, and obviously Standing for Reform, a few days before the election, you can only guess what actually happened with it. After the initial surprise, shock, anger, whatever you want to call it, I then took it as a compliment, because I thought to myself, well, obviously I must be making an impact, otherwise they wouldn't be bothering with me. Election came and went, so here we are, nearly a month later. What do you do at this point? You contact the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, and you make a subject access request. By law, they must forward to you everything that they hold about you. So in my case, it was, you said this, please let me have all the information you have about me. Tell me what information you have, where you got it, and what steps you took to verify it. Because they never said anything to imply that it might not be true or anything of the sort. They stated it as fact. 2 of them one of them being a quite large one, have still not replied, but they will have to. One of them, another very large media source, has responded. And here's what they said to me. We don't really have a lot of information about you. Can we have this and this and this from you so that we can sort of find out what we have about you? So I then replied, well, you know my name, and there aren't many people with my name from Northampton who stood for reform for Northampton North. Here's a link to the article. I would like blah, blah, blah. They then replied, and again, they said, we need a bit more information, and could you share links to your social media to help us find what we have? So here's a media source, a mainstream media source, who published information about me that came from what I allegedly said years ago, and they don't know where it came from, and they're asking me to direct them. So effectively, I've stuck to my guns. The next step will be a complaint, and then it will go through legal process because they don't have a leg to stand on. Unfortunately, what this moron, Keir Stalin, has done over the last few days is he has fueled the sense of entitled take offense behavior throughout the country. So effectively, they are trying to bully everybody into self-censoring to the point where not only they don't say anything, not only they don't make any allegations, but that nobody actually expresses an opinion for fear of offending the toxic left. Now, obviously, as many of you may be aware, it's not difficult to offend the toxic left. In fact, you don't have to do anything. You just don't have to be toxic left, and that offends them, to be honest. But now we're seeing this increased animosity towards anybody who thinks for themselves, raises questions, raises an opinion, raises a theory, whatever that may be. And this is going to backfire because those who think that they are benefiting from this clamping down in the name of protecting minorities or individuals, this is not a path to individualism. This is a pathway to collectivism. It is a pathway to silencing everyone, but it's literally a zigzag. You use one against the other, then you go back to the other one, then you go backwards and forwards, using each one or different sides to gag each other until you get to the point where there is a collective zero tolerance on anybody expressing an opinion, speaking out, or contradicting the narrative. And that is the only way that a collection of incompetent morons can stay in power, because clearly they have no ability to run the country. Everything that they have done has been based on incompetence, on malice, on resentment, and on envy. Full stop. There is no argument about this. And despite the fact that our Chancellor spent a few days laying the foundations for having to make cuts that she had promised she wouldn't make, we know for a fact that she knew all the figures down to the last penny before the election, and yet they lied and lied, and the first thing they did was to go and steal from 10 million pensioners, of which over 9 million, if not 9.5 million, need their winter fuel allowance. That was their first step, because this was about them putting their stamp on the our democracy, or sadly, on the decline of our democracy. And that is why it has been so important that the masses who are angry, understandably so, are not provoked into reacting. People must respond in time, in the correct manner, at the correct time, together. But nobody should take things into their own hands and go out there and allow themselves to be provoked into anything that can then be used by Keir Stalin to enforce yet more draconian measures on everyone. Because have no doubt that this guy and his puppet masters do not care about the individuals or minorities that they are purporting to protect. They are merely exploiting them to actually create a situation that they can then implement the measures they want. As I've said many times, create a problem, terrify the people or convince the people or win the people over, whichever, or lie to them, offer a solution. That's the standard practice. That's what they're doing now. Let me just have a look and see if I've got any more questions here on TikTok. I'm sorry, guys, trying to keep up with everything, but I wanted you to actually join me as well. Stop talking with your hands, you never used to. I'm so sorry. I'll try not to. Absolutely. EDL finished 9 or 10 years ago. Labour won't see the full term out. They are failing our country. Absolutely. Animosity. Only one group is setting fires, and it ain't the left. If you say so. They will come for them next. Look at the trans history. Left are dangerous. Yes. I've seen the tweets you made, big lad. You've got a lot to answer for. Oh, really? Oh, I'm not entitled to an opinion, am I? Okay, up to you. That's fine. Feel free. So what's next? Exactly. He puts a fig leaf of denial on his dog whistles. You got the smoke. Now you're backtracking. No, I'm not backtracking from anything, chap. Anyway, okay. So, as I was saying, what is happening now is that this administration who's in now, sadly, are doing everything that they can to cling onto power and to shut down all avenues of dissent because they know that they are on borrowed time. The majority don't want them. They won by they only got just over 33% of the vote. Nearly 67% of those who voted did not want them in. This wasn't their win. It was the Conservative loss. And we all know that. And most of what they are promising won't happen. The building of houses just won't happen. They really don't have a clue. And on top of that, from a fiscal point of view, Great British Energy is going to literally take billions and throw it into a black hole. Of course, the friends of those who are in the right place will make a lot of money that will all come from levies that everyday people pay. But in the end, it won't actually get us anywhere. And as if there's one thing that Rishi Sunak has said correctly, is that Keir Stalin will literally destroy the country in 100 days. We're on day 34, 35, whatever it is, and look at the damage that they have done already. They have literally fanned the flames of civil unrest. They literally have encouraged provocation directly and indirectly, and at the same time they are punishing people for being angry. So there are lots of sinister events happening that we're aware of, and behind the scenes as well, and that is something that should concern all of us, because there's always going to be an element of society that has no respect for our country's border, for our borders, for our country's sovereignty, or anything of the sort. That's neither here nor there. But what does matter is that people who are the majority, who believe in a sovereign nation, who believe in borders, are literally now being victimized en masse by the government, by the law, and by the left-wing nutters who literally are the useful fools, useful idiots for the government, unfortunately. This is something that, in the meantime, we must learn to tolerate rather than react to, because the way things are at the moment, they are all sitting there hoping and praying that we'll react. And I can assure you that there are some very, very disappointed people throughout the country tonight, because normal, everyday citizens, decent people who are angry, didn't rise to the provocation and debate today. And that's absolutely wonderful. And good evening, Rob. I hope you are well. Wouldn't it be great to hear a definition of far left from an actual lefty? You'll never hear that. Okay, let's go back to TikTok. What have we got here? The UK have had enough of being bullied by do-gooders. Do-gooders or do-badders? Fed up of being called racist just because, yes. I cannot understand them. Why do they want to do this to us? Most Brits are not racist. We have common sense. We are not all yobs out for trouble. The UK citizens are good people. Absolutely. Completely agree. All that's happened is good people, or the majority of good people, are now angry people. And this is where the danger lies, because when people get angry, when a can of worms is open, all sorts of things happen. And the concern must be for young people, because it's very easy for young people in a situation of a crowd, in a situation of being antagonized, to push things too far, and suddenly they've ruined their life. So we need to do what we can to prevent them from taking steps like that, because ultimately this is what Starmer and his puppeteers want, because they have plans for us, they have plans for this country. And at the same time, today was actually quite an important day in terms of news. And we've all been distracted with this false flag. What day is it today? Today is somebody's birthday. It was the birthday of somebody who is allegedly 18 today, but nothing has been mentioned. No photos have been released, no details. At this point, that's all I can say. But I am watching, and I'm not alone. And people are raising questions, despite the fact that it offends some people. We do have the right to ask questions, and we do have the right to express an opinion. And that is absolutely how it should be. So there you go. I'm sure you'll be aware of what I'm referring to. And is it a coincidence that we had all of this happen today, and yet the incident that sparked this wasn't mentioned? And along with this, all these people who are offended, you said it was Mrs. Mops with a steel bar in the dining room, and You caused all of this, really. But how about, at the end of the day, everyone has a right to be angry because just last week, 3 little girls were killed. But nobody's just been mentioning that today, have they? Good evening, Dave. Greetings, Anthony. As you're a man with an eye on Europe, are you able to bring us up to date with what Labour have started to do with their efforts for the UK to crawl back into the EU? There's quite a bit going on, but yesterday and today I have been extremely busy. But I will actually put something together and I'll cover it. What day is it? Wednesday. I'll cover it Friday or Saturday. Okay, so that I can be a little bit prepared. But definitely, that's another issue that concerns me. One, I'm concerned about, as I've said previously. One, I am concerned about Starmer signing up to the quota within Europe, because that's literally just going to open up a continued pathway into the UK. Two, I am concerned about him signing us up to a European defence force. These people should learn from their history. How did we get dragged into World War One? How did we get dragged into World War Two? By treaties. That's how we got dragged in. And they're repeating the same mistake again. And that really is worrying. So we'll have to see. But we all know they're desperate to get us in by the back door. And Europe is desperate for our input in any way, shape, or form, because economically, since we've left, it has had a catastrophic effect on them. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. What have we got here? Totally. Our friends working UAE and illegal migrants are unheard of there. Oh, absolutely. Well, this is on TikTok. Have friends working in the UAE and legal migrants are unheard of there. Well, you may remember the other day when I'd mentioned speaking to a business associate out in the UAE, and we'll also have a few in Saudi. And Saudi has completely changed direction. They're going for property development, tourism, and it's incredible. And it literally is where Dubai was 20 odd years ago now, with huge opportunities. And one of my colleagues, who I've spoken to quite a few times, I did ask him about this. And his words were the same as that guy who appeared on social media a few weeks ago, who said, "You have no clue what you are importing into Europe. We wouldn't have them here." That gives you an idea of how they see it. And it's ironic because a lot of wealthy people here, 9,000, I believe, have left just recently from the UK, are heading to the UAE. Isn't that ironic? Send the yobs to the beaches to turn the boats back to France. Good idea. If you could do any research, a large percent of the UK will be retirement age soon. We need immigration. But there's a difference between smart immigration and mass immigration. I have said before, immigration should be around net zero or slightly less for a few years so that we can catch up a little bit. That's a large number, because 500,000 or 600,000 people a year leave this country. That leaves a large window for the people who we need. But if we don't focus on those we need, and we just allow people who are coming here to take advantage, then that doesn't work. It actually exacerbates the problem. Divide and chemtrail, that's progress, folks. I only caught a snippet, but it was on Sky News that they are claiming they will arrest and charge people who are sharing videos and written material of riots, etc., that incites violence. Yes, they've actually said that if you share any videos of the violence, that you will be arrested. Now, keep in mind, there has been no change in law. That just doesn't happen overnight in one day. It is more threats because, and it's ironic that it was today. Think about it. The media has been pushing out today about over 100 protests, riots, whatever it may be, up and down the country. And on that day that they do that, the media are also informing us that sharing any videos of what happens could be deemed to be inciting violence. A cynical person would think, was it because they knew that there's a good chance that there wouldn't be anybody from the far right in attendance? Possibly. You never know, do you? Stalin seems to be a globalist. I wouldn't say seems to be. I would say is. And he, as I've said before, at the election we didn't vote for we didn't vote for him anyway, did we? But he wasn't elected as a leader. He was elected as a change of middle management. The puppet masters are in the background and they're pulling the strings. And they will not rest because we literally messed up their plans by leaving the EU. That is what has happened, and they will not rest until the borders, countries, cultures are all gone. That's how it is. Anybody who can't see that, well, in that case, there's no point actually trying to explain to them if they can't see it. And at the same time, those who can see it and support it need to have a serious think about who they are and where we will be in a few years' time, especially those who are younger, because in their lifetime, if we continue on our current path, things throughout Europe are going to change beyond recognition. And many may think that's a good thing, but trust me, it will not be. Yes, but you never differentiate between the two. Maybe just another tiny coincidence. Oh, absolutely, I'm sure it's just a coincidence. I do differentiate. Every time I mention immigration, I always mention net zero migration. That would be legal migration. And I know for a fact, on many occasions, I have said that 500,000 or 600,000 people, it was 600,000 last year, I believe, something like that, had left, which means that net zero would be 500,000 or 600,000 coming in. That would be okay, provided we had a very strict criteria in who we choose to allow into our country so that we have the right people. And I don't think there is anyone who could dispute that 500,000 or 600,000 of the right people coming in each year would not be enough to fulfill our requirements, especially if we actually changed our educational strategy a little bit and stopped trying to push people who really shouldn't be in university, who have different skill sets, to study different things rather than push everybody into university and then have them leave university at 21 or 22 with 50 or 60,000 pounds worth of debt and very little prospect of finding the right job or a job that justifies the studying that they have done. So it's not just one. It's not a silver. There isn't a silver bullet. It's not just one issue. There's a combination of issues. But with legal migration, we could quite easily get it down to net zero because ultimately it is the government, the civil service, who decides how many visas are granted for people to come here. And if it is a case of net zero, one in, one out, that could be put in place immediately. And as far as illegal migration goes, in the order of things, um, thousands may be a very, very small number as compared to the whole, be it the whole amount of migration or the population, but it is the principle that British people cannot and will not accept. And this is making them angry and it is causing divisions. But unfortunately, when people do get angry, then they get slandered with all of the usual labels. The infrastructure in many cities is unable to cope with the uncontrolled influx. Absolutely. As I've said previously, we do not have a housing problem crisis. We have a population crisis, and it is straightforward to deal with. I'm against losing any more greenbelt land. Whether they call it greenbelt or decide to call it grey belt, we should lose no more greenbelt land, no more farmland, not to housing, and not to solar farms, not to wind farms. There is enough brownfield capacity in this country for all. In fact, as I've said before, on brownfield sites, we have an estimate capacity for an estimated 1.2 to 2 million homes, plus over 670,000 empty homes in England alone. If we control our borders, if we control immigration, we won't have a housing crisis and things will settle down. And with the correct incentives to bring many of these empty homes back into use, the correct laws to prevent overseas investors from just buying property to park their money and just locking them up and keeping people out, which is fundamentally wrong to do this in a country that needs all of the housing, their money could be used to invest differently. Their money could be used for developing homes on brownfield sites, be they social housing, affordable housing, first time buyer homes, which would give them an annual yield. And many of those properties could be sold off at a discount after 5 years, which could be the buyer's deposit. They would also get a return on their investment. It could all be done without it even costing the government a penny. But I believe that they're going about it the wrong way. And the figures that they have thrown of 1.5 million homes in 5 years, 300,000 a year, 6,000 a week, I really, really don't think they understand the gravity of the task to actually make that happen. They won't make it happen. That you can be certain of. So on that note, after a peaceful day, which I'm delighted that it has ended this way, and I hope that it continues through the night. But I am sure that it will. I'm hoping that the violent side of things have come to a stop, and I hope that that does continue. And whatever people's opinions are, I believe that they should be entitled to express their opinions. I believe that people should be able to argue their case, but in a peaceful and civilized manner. So, Rob, pardon my ignorance, but has the king been vocal at all about what is happening? No. A little theory could be that he's making deals with Islamic royalty and importing AI slaves. I don't know what is happening, but he has been very, very quiet. But then, having said that, he is in a very, very difficult situation, because if he were to make himself available openly in any way, and large numbers of people were to call on him, for example, what would happen if large crowds gathered at a venue where the king was going to be, or something along those lines, and they were all demanding that the king acts, but he can't. He can, but in reality he can't. That puts everybody in a difficult situation. And I'm sure that even after several hundred years, that King Charles would not like to follow in the footsteps of King Charles I. So I don't expect him to actually take any steps at the moment. What they're doing behind the scenes, I haven't got a clue, to be honest. So anyway, thank you very much for joining me. Agree or disagree, it's always a pleasure. And I will leave you now. I'd like to bid you all a wonderful evening, unless you have any more questions for me. I've just signed out of TikTok. It's a bit difficult trying to keep an eye on both, isn't it? But anyway, and as I said, once again, to all of you who feel very angry and very passionate about what is happening, I completely agree. We must not stop the fight. We must continue to push for our sovereignty and the control of our borders and our freedom, our liberty that has been paid for with blood. We cannot allow that to be taken from us. And we're almost at the point where they're about to do that. When we reach a point where people are arrested for their opinion, then blood has been spilled in vain. And sadly, if we allow this path to continue, every single person who fought in previous wars will have been labouring under a misapprehension because they were fighting to free the United Kingdom, not to see it enslaved, not to see it handed over on a plate to the globalists for them to destroy our borders, our heritage, our culture, and our way of life. Where we go from here is in the hands of the masses, and you are the masses. Make no mistake about that. Despite the spin from the media, these nutters are the minority, a toxic, fanatical, treacherous minority. But where we are now, we must make our argument peacefully, but we must not relent despite the pressure to do so. Always my pleasure, Rob. Yes, what was I going to look into? The EU. I will do a little bit more research. About time we talked about the EU, isn't it? Yes, because we've been focused too much on what's going on locally. Let's look for some topics beyond our borders and see what's happening over there. Germany is the one that I'm struggling to find a lot of info about just lately. It's all gone very, very quiet. And I wonder why. Because if it served their purpose, the media would be telling us. Have no doubt about that. So if the fact that they're not telling us something always raises questions.